Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. We'll surely appreciate it here on 100 Yards of Football. I'd like to give special thanks to my producer who's making it happen today. I'm very blessed and very thankful to Mr. Logan Landers. I'm your host, Vincent Turner, and today's video is our 2024 NFL Draft prospect, Mr. Bo Nix, quarterback by way of Auburn University, by way of Oregon University. And joining me today to talk about this young man, I consider him the best in the business. The gentleman was a former scout under Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick. His knowledge is unbelievable when you talk about NFL draft players. He's got a hell of a website, firstroundmark.com. It tells you all you need to know about the players. And one thing I love about this gentleman right here, as he come to us live out of Key West, Florida, like it or not, he's brutally honest. He's not going to change his opinion. He's going to stay right where he's at, and I can respect that 100%. So the very talented Mr. Daniel Kelly joined us today here on 100 Yards of Football. How you doing, DK? Coming live out of Key West, Florida.
Hey, I'm doing well, Mr. Turner, as always. It's hard not to be doing well down here in Key West, Florida. Like I tell people all the time, if you're not having fun down here, you're not trying.
Hey, what's the weather like, my man?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's not snowing, and it's not raining. It's probably about 81, if I had to guess. Pretty nice day. It gets a little windy at times. But, you know, I'm from Minnesota. Nobody wants to hear that. I mean, it's very funny because during this time of the year, like there'll be like no likes on our post on our personal Facebook pages. My wife and I, there'll be nobody liking the stuff. They're like, nah, we're not liking it. And I can't talk about how it's gotten colder and it's now 60. Nobody wants to hear that stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, let's get to it. Let's talk about the young man who left Auburn University in the SEC and played his final 2 years at the University of Oregon under Dan Lanning.
Absolutely. Bo Nix there. We see him on your screen, number 10, and 6'2", 217 pounds. He's as well-schooled as they come as far as the techniques and the throwing mechanics and everything else. He will be a pro day sensation as far as like being able to go through the drills and everything like that. And I tell you what, it's really surprising because that's why you have to watch the game film every year because, like, you know, there's either an arrow going up, an arrow going down, or arrow going sideways on these guys. And if somebody would have told me last year heading into the season that I'd be sitting here putting a first-round grade on Bo Nix, I would have laughed. I would have fallen on my chair laughing because I had a fifth-round grade, well, but really between a third and a fifth. I looked at him 2 different times heading into the 2023 season. But now, like I said, I have a first-round grade on him. I believe he can start as a rookie in the National Football League. And I have him really about an 18 to 21 range in the first round. You know, and of course, we all remember Bo Nix when he played at Auburn, and there was one word that defined him at Auburn, and that's inconsistent. But he has shown steady improvement and projects as a starter in the NFL. I think he's going to land his ceiling is somewhere between on the quarterback rankings between 17 and 32 on the chart. I think that's where he's going to end up and not rising above that. NFL comp would be Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, who's the most overrated player in the National Football League in my mind. 78, 70, and 2 Mr. Cousins is in the National Football League. Ironically, when I close my eyes and all I see is Bo Nix on the Minnesota Vikings. That's what I see there. And I believe the Vikings have to. Kevin O'Connell has to get his quarterback this year. Cousins is already talking and about playing for Bill Belichick. Josh Dobbs is apparently not the answer, and Nick Mullins isn't either. For the sake of the Minnesota Vikings head coach's job, he's got to get a quarterback, and I think Nix could be that guy for him. The 2 big things that Nix improved on this season in 2023, when I went back, now I've now watched Nix. This isn't a hot take. I've spent hours upon endless hours. I've looked at 24 out of 26 games during the 2022 and 2023 season. The 2 big things that he improved most on that jumped off the screen to me were his accuracy and his ball security. In 2022, he had 7 interceptions and 24 PBUs, pass breakups, that I personally charted with chicken scratches in my notes, just, chicken scratches. It was a 2.18 PBU average per game. However, in 2023, that dropped down to 3 interceptions and 17 PBUs in 13 games, 1.31 average. NFL coaches love them a quarterback that can keep the ball out of harm's way, which means interceptions, and it means PBUs, pass breakups. Nix was far less hesitant in 2023 in the pocket versus 2022. A stat flashed against the in the Pac-12 championship game that he was at 2.5 seconds time to throw. When you compare that to, I think it ended up being about 2.5 was the final stat I think PFF published as well. When you look at that, that would make Bo Nix have the second fastest release time, apples to apples. If apples to oranges now, but if that worked out, he'd be right about the second fastest release time in the NFL, next to Tua Tagovailoa, who's at 2.38. So that's really good. I mean, you're looking at a very quick time to throw for Bo Nix. It's also, it causes him to translate in not avoiding taking sacks and big yardage losses. This guy's only been sacked 10 times in the last 2 seasons at Oregon, which is huge. You compare that to like a Shedeur Sanders who sacked like 52 times or 55 times in 1 season. This guy's 10 times in 2 seasons. Getting the ball out of his hand faster also caused his completion percentage to go up in 2023. In 2022, it was 71.9%. He checked in all stats, ESPN.com, and that jumped up to a staggering 77.2% in 2023. Before that was that stat I took down before the Fiesta Bowl. But when you look at Bo Nix, I think the biggest concern I had about him was him in pressure situations. But, in that Pac-12 championship game, despite losing that game, he battled back 2 second-half touchdowns, including after falling behind 34-24 with 2:44 to go. What else did it for me about Bo Nix? Elite traits. Okay, when we're talking first round, we're talking about elite, dynamic, game-changing traits. Okay, Nix showed he could repeatedly bail out of the pocket under pressure and make accurate throws on the move. This is Bo Nix's best trait. That's what I would say in the NFL war room if I was with coaches and the GM and directors and everybody else, including the owner, is that he can bail the pocket and he can make accurate passes on the move. That's what just his game film is spray painted with to be able to do that. And with so much focus. Okay, this is the NFL game today. That's why he translates so well to the National Football League, because there's so much focus on the short to intermediate, the receiver bubble screens, the quick slants, the little curl routes. So much of the NFL's the offensive game planning across the boards is a short 0 to 19 yards, high percentage. Let's just kind of work our way down the field type of offense. This trait will serve Bo Nix extremely well in the National Football League. Another thing that stood out in game film and jumped out at me was how in tune he was, Bo Nix was with his wide receivers. It's like they practically breathe together. The way they move, the way the receivers move with him, and the way he moves with the receivers. Nix was like watching him on game film was like watching a conductor of a symphony. The way he vibed with his receivers and the way he was able to move with them. Nix is like having another coach on the field. 60 starts, FBS starts, most in history in the FBS, and the first quarterback in FBS history who is actually for 2 different schools with 55 plus touchdowns rushing and passing. He's also showing the ability, this is important, let's make sure we catch this. He's shown the ability to adapt to different environments, because it's important, because he's going to a different environment. He's going to an NFL team from college. He's somebody who has actually shown he can do that. And he's had different offensive coordinators at Oregon. He can show he can adjust to different coaching situations. Even the TV announcer against Cal, and I quote, said he's got such an uncanny ability to process what's happening, how it's happening. It's really hard to trick him. He's really super experienced. He turns 24 years old on February 25th. I, for one, am not one of these guys that looks as age as a bad thing. I look at maturity as a very good thing. It's funny, we can get down on these young guys who are 24 years old, but then we think Aaron Rodgers at 40, 41 is the next best thing since sliced bread. This is a good thing, guys, that the maturity level that he has. He's really most comfortable throwing in the pocket from routes that have a break point, intermediate throws. I'm talking about slants. I'm talking about intermediate, what they call dagger routes, intermediate slants as well. The positives, let's run through them real quickly. A pro style quarterback, good arm strength. He's got a very, very high football IQ, quick tempo, processes the game really quickly. As we talked about, a quick time to release. This guy can almost get the ball of his hand as quickly as Tua Tagovailoa can from a college standpoint with the Miami Dolphins, who has the quickest release in the NFL per next gen stats. He's a guy that he can polish mechanics, as I touched on at the top of the show. Can make the off-platform throws. He's a moderate running threat, at least enough to get himself out of trouble, like I talked about in bailout. He can pick up chunks of yardage here and there, move the sticks. Decent taking care of his body when he does so, which is huge. He can slide or run out of bounds. The guy's all business, stone-faced. You could chisel his face in the Mount Rushmore if you wanted to, which is a positive and negative because he doesn't show a whole lot of emotion except for putting a towel over his head at the end of the game when the season ended. The big one, the negatives, to me, he lacks the it factor. That's why he'll never rise above being between 17 to 32 on the starting, the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I do not see the it factor in him, just like I do not see the it factor in Kirk Cousins. He was 6-5 versus ranked teams in 2022 and 2023. I do not like his deep game, Sam. He was a guy that was 6 out of 20, charted deep passes, tends to overthrow the deep ball. I didn't like how he got bogged down inside the red zone. Oregon ranked number 40, I believe, at NCAA.com. Red zone efficiency, 25 touchdowns passing on 67 trips inside the red zone in 2023. Tends to lock in pre-delivery. That's something I don't like too. Kirk Cousins does as well, and he's gotten away with it. But also there's a tendency in Bo Nix there on your screen, number 10. There's a tendency for him to tense up at times and try to steer the ball, which causes inaccuracies, intermediate to deep level. But all things considered, this guy may very well prove to be this is a plug and play franchise quarterback that you can just bring in, plug in. For example, if the Vikings brought him in and Kirk Cousins walked, this is a guy you can plug in from day one, throw away the keys and see how it goes. Your thoughts on Bo Nix, Mr. Turner?
I'm 63 years old. I've been following college football ever since the time I was 6 years old and recognized what the game was about. Notre Dame and Michigan State, the first college game that I can remember watching on ABC, the great Chris Schenkel broadcasting the game with Bud Wilkinson. And I've seen a lot of great football players, but I never seen a football player that came out of high school that was a highly rated 5-star player, went to his father's school that his father played at, and came into that school with so much pressure. When Bo Nix was at Auburn, man, the pressure he playing there for 3 years was just amazing. He couldn't do no wrong. And I thought he handled it real well, and I didn't think he had a lot of talent around him at Auburn. But you want to talk about a situation, go back to his first game he started as a true freshman. He defeated Justin Herbert in Oregon in a college football classic game. And the one thing I took from that game about this young man is that, hey, no matter what, this young man is going to give it all he's got on the field. Well, things didn't work out at Auburn. As I just said, I didn't think he had the most talented team around him. And he came under a lot of criticism. And it was one time during his years at Auburn, you were saying, man, is this young man going to ever be able to get over the hump? I can truly say the best decision he made getting out of Auburn and transferring to Oregon and changed his career. And you think about his father, Patrick, who played quarterback at Auburn, who played on the great teams in the 90s under Terry Bowden, You got to think that's a lot of pressure. And then Bo Nix's grandfather, Conrad Nix, is a very highly former acclaimed coach in the state of Georgia at Warren Robins at Northside High School. And the young man had so much pressure playing in a pressurized SEC. But when he got to the Pac-12, Under first year coaching Dan Lanning, who was a former defensive coordinator at Georgia that had seen Bo Nix play, Dan Lanning said, I'm a bet on you. And think about what Dan Lanning did. His first job, Dan Lanning is a head coach. No room for error, and he took Bo Nix, a gentleman that struggled at Auburn. Well, you know what? He saw something in Bo Nix that we didn't see. And I remember this. Bo Nix's first game at Oregon, they got roughshod by Georgia in that classic game in Mercedes-Benz Dome here in Atlanta. I mean, they got ran off the field, and I think Bo Nix threw 3 picks that game. And I got to thinking, is Bo Nix going to be the same as he was at Auburn? But look what he done at Oregon. He turned it around, led Oregon to a great season. Then this year, he led Oregon to a national championship conversation. He was Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. He was a Heisman finalist. You didn't see that with Bo Nix at Auburn at no means, at no time in his career. But what I liked about him, I like how he changed. In 2 seasons, the gentleman had 74 touchdowns, man, in the era. Only 10 interceptions. He had over 100 yards. But it showed me that if you get Bo Nix with some talent around him, some NFL talent, you're going to have something special. Bucket Irvin, running back out of Oregon, is going to be one of the top backs taken in the draft. Troy Franklin, I know who you know that is, Mr. Kelly.
Oh, yes.
6'3", 187, who can get deep. Trez Johnson, another big-time receiver who can get deep. And watching him play, Mr. Nix, since that loss to Georgia in that first game when he was quarterback at Oregon, from that second game on up till now, his career took off, and he became one of the best players in the country. And let's make no mistake, he could have easily won the Heisman if they would have beat Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. That game was so close, and how he brought Oregon back. It was a couple of plays in that game. They beat Washington. They go to the national semifinals against Texas. He might win the Heisman. And then all of a sudden, we talking about Bo Nix. Even though we talking about him a first-round pick, we might be talking about him top 10. But the thing I liked about him was his perseverance. A guy that believed in his abilities. He left one school, a state that he loved, but he had to leave because they was really putting him under a lot of scrutiny and really wasn't saying kind things about him as a football player. And you know they had to be rough on his father and grandfather and his family. But what I liked about him, he matured a lot when he got to Oregon. He got married. That showed me a lot with him. And then the numbers he put up, and he had great talent around him. And that's why we're talking about Bo Nix today as one of the top quarterbacks in the 2024 NFL draft. And when you look at the comparisons, he's a tremendous dual threat guy. To me, he got a little bit that shake and bake, like the young man out of Newport News, Virginia, that played at Virginia Tech by the name of Michael Vick. He got a little bit of Roger Staubach. The Naval Academy, Dallas Cowboys, ability to scramble and keep your eyes down the field. Got a little bit of Randall Cunningham in him. Then he got a little bit of the great one. He reminds me of this player so much that this guy played in the 60s and 70s and took the Minnesota Vikings from your hometown to the Super Bowl a couple of times. Ran me a little bit of Francis Tarkenton out of the University of Georgia by way of Athens, Georgia. And then he got a little bit of Steve Young with a running ability and ability to keep complete passes and throw for yards. I wouldn't be surprised if Bo Nix becomes a star at the next level, especially he goes to the Minnesota Vikings. That's a good team that you pick DK for him, your hometown team, because Minnesota's got everything in place. They got stars from Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. All they need is a man that can pull the trigger and run that airplane and run that Corvette or that Maserati. And Bo Nix can be that guy. I love him because, and I give him a lot of respect, he turned his career around. He left the school he loved, that he grew up going watching Cam Newton play at Auburn, win the national championship. Things didn't work out well. He matured. He went to Oregon, put up numbers, changed his game, and now that's what we're talking about. Mr. Bo Nix as one of the top quarterbacks in the 2024 draft. And I got a lot of love and respect for him.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Turner. You touch on just a lot of great bullet points there. And I think it's interesting because when we talk about comps, right? That's the buzzword, comps, comparables. You just rattled off 4, 5, 6 names there. That when you start talking about those type of quarterbacks, as Bo Nix being kind of a mixture, the way you describe him, you're definitely talking about a guy that's going to start in the National Football League. I mean, it's like I said, he's like having another coach on the field. And also, I think you touch on something very important, Mr. Turner, and that's the maturity. Okay, there's an old saying in scouting that the game is won or lost from the neck up. Okay, that's key here. And what you're looking at is you're looking at a guy. You're looking for a guy because when you pick a quarterback, it's like getting married. I mean, that's going to be the guy. That's going to be, Kevin O'Connell's legacy in Minnesota, for better, for worse. And so when you're looking for that quarterback, you're looking for a guy who has a good maturity level, a good head on his shoulder, a guy who's been branded by fire and has been through some tough times and has persevered and come out the other side. Because you're right, he came into that situation, Auburn, a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, some disappointment. He's inconsistent. Dan Lanning, who I love. If I was sitting in front of an NFL owner and he asked me who's going to be the head coach of your team if I hire you as a GM, my answer right now would be Dan Lanning. And I love the passion. I love the emotion. I love what he brings. I practically wanted to run through a wall when he gave that speech before the Colorado game. It's like I started flexing my jewelry. I was like, hey, come on, man, let's do this thing. I love Dan Lanning, and I do wear bracelets, by the way, so I was ready to flex them. But I look at the maturity level, the head on the shoulders, and also too, another nice thing about Bo Nix is he's got experience. There's not much he hasn't seen at the college level with the 60 FBS starts, and he's been a guy who's been consistently getting better. If you go on the ESPN.com and look at his QBR, 2019 125, 2020 I believe it was like 120, like 127.9. 2021 130.0, 2022 is 165.7, 2023 186.2. What does that all have in common? The numbers are going up. This is a guy with an arrow going up next to his grade with tremendous maturity. And I think that, that when you look at traits, I mean, bottom line, you look at things like, does he go through his progressions? I've talked about in previous shows, quick release, ball placement, ball security, knowing how to slide, when to slide. These are things, I mean, quarterbacks, picking a quarterback in the National Football League is like picking the winning Powerball tickets. There are so many variables involved, but it's not a crapshoot. It's not a shot in the dark. It's not just throwing darts against the wall and picking the name of a hat. It's much more involved in that. And there's tells, like a game of poker. There's tells. There's things I just rattled off that you can. There's ways you can make an educated guess. Who's going to work out. And I do believe, and I'm putting my name on him, if someone wants to get back into the National Football League as my end game, I am putting my name on Bo Nix with a first-round grade, and I love that fit with the Minnesota Vikings. You point out, Mr. Turner, I think you plug him in with a Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and that's a really good situation. If Kirk Cousins had a little brother, it would be Bo Nix.
My final words about Bo Nix, I got a lot of respect for you, man. You left War Eagle, you left Auburn, and it was the greatest thing, I think, for you in your career. And you went to Oregon, and, man, you balled out, as we say in the neighborhood. Boy, did you ball out. And you made the University of Oregon proud. And the thing I like is Dan Lanning took a chance on you. And you didn't let Dan Lanning down. So kudos to you, Mr. Bo Nix, and kudos to your career in the NFL. I think you're going to be a player at the next level. I'm going to call you Fran Tarkenton, too, because of your ability. Final words about Bo Nix, Mr. Daniel Kelly.
Well, I tell you what, as my NFL mentor, a man who with 4 Super Bowl rings, who was Bill Belichick's most trusted evaluator through the first 2-3 Patriots Super Bowls, used to always tell me, if you got a quarterback, you got a chance. And I think that Bo Nix is going to be a real good pick for some lucky team in the 2024 NFL Draft.
If you like the video, please comment and share. We surely appreciate here at 100 Yards Football. Special thanks to our producer who made it happen today, the very talented Mr. Logan Numbers. Once again, thank you to Mr. Daniel Kelly, the best in the biz, that's covering the NFL Draft out of Key West, Florida. I'm Vincent Turner. Y'all be blessed here on 100 Yards of Football.